Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first Elevate Innovation webinar sponsored by RTC North. Now, as some of you will have seen over the last few months, innovation is something that we're really passionate about at Elevate. We've had a very challenging last 12 months or so, and we know that out of that, companies that were already innovating have gone to the next level with it. Companies who perhaps didn't think of themselves as being particularly innovative have completely pivoted their businesses. We also know that there are companies out there who have got some amazing innovative ideas. They've got some great things that they want to try and get involved in, but they perhaps don't have the funding and support to do that. So obviously one of the areas of support we can do is always, get in touch with Elevate. For those of you who have not met before, my name's Ilona Alcock. I'm one of the directors at Elevate. Or get in touch with one of my colleagues, and there's always things we can do to help you put you in touch with the right people. And of course, one of the fantastic organisations that we would always love to put people in touch with is RTC North, who are the delivery partner for Innovate UK. So they're not just about finding funding, although that is something that we're going to focus on today. There is a whole suite of support available to people who are looking to innovate. And the government is very much behind this as a strategy, as we have, that roadmap that's now just been released as to how we kind of start and get out to normal. One of the huge things that we also need to look at is how do we get the economy back to where it needs to be, and innovative companies are going to be a huge part of that story. So I've got two brilliant speakers lined up today. We have both Angela Smith and Mike Skinner from RTC North here on behalf of Innovate UK. So I'm going to pass over to Angela first. She's going to run us through a presentation, and then we're then going to bring Mike Skinner on. Now, in typical 2021 tech fashion, we are having a couple of little issues behind the scenes with Mike. We're hoping that will all be sorted in time to drop him in. If it's not for any reason, don't worry, we will record that and send that out with the full video after the session anyway, but keep your fingers crossed, he'll be joining us. And in the meantime, I'm going to pass over to Angela. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Angela Smith. You may see my picture there. So a few things you need to know about me. I'm for RTC North and for Innovate UK EDGE. My expertise is particularly in grant funding. That is because previously I worked for micro SMEs. Part of my job for them was applying for grant funding. Something that I bring to the role today, where I have considerable experience in getting people through that grant writing process. I also love games. So to make sure that you're all paying attention this morning, I have put somewhere in my slide deck an obscure reference to the office site that we have at Daresbury near Warrington. So you don't get any prizes for spotting it, you just get bragging rights. So do put in the chat any questions you have and your guesses on what that obscure reference is. So moving on. When it comes to grants, it's important to know what grants are not, as well as what they are. So, what grants are not? They are not free money. Now, they are neither are they a way to help your business if it's in a bit of difficulty. They're not going to get you out of a hole. And they are not there to fund your existing business activities. So if you've got existing commercial activity, grants are not for that. So what are they? They are funding for innovative projects. They are there to fund projects that are important for your business growth, and they are a way to de-risk innovation development. So we often talk about the innovation gap between that blue sky research that research institutions and universities do and commercialisation. That is where grants fit. So before you even look at grants, the question to ask yourself is, are grants right for me? Are they the source of funding that I actually need right now? So, ladies and gentlemen, eyes down, we're going to play grant funding bingo. Ask yourself 5 questions. Is my project novel? Is it innovative? If it's yes, fantastic, you're off to a good start. Does it fit a societal need? Is there a need within society, whether it's combating climate change, whether it's to do with the pandemic, that this project fits with? If it's yes, congratulations, give yourself another tick. Will it change your business in some way? Does the project fit in with your business strategy? If it doesn't align with your business strategy, maybe you should be questioning whether you should be doing it at all. Give yourself another tick if it does. Can you provide match funding? There are very, very few grants out there that are 100% funded. The maximum rate you can expect is 70% of your eligible cost. You need to find that remaining 30%. If you can do that, fantastic. Now, will the market buy it? We're looking for market pull, not a technology push. Will the market buy it? Is it something that they will put their hands in their pocket and pay you money for? If it is, fantastic. Answer all these questions, yes. Congratulations, you have grant funding bingo, so grants are appropriate for you. Now, next stage, where do you even start looking for grants? There are multiple sources. There's all sorts, we're going to just dip into some key ones today. There's UK avenues, so particularly Innovate UK and UK Research of Innovation. Now, Innovate UK fits under UKRI, UK Research and Innovation. That is a big source of innovative grant funding for business within the UK. Should be your first port of call. Has the distinct advantage in that it's a fairly simple and reasonably quick grant funding mechanism. There's also international avenues you can look at, things like Eurostars and Horizon Europe. Yes, the UK has associated to Horizon Europe. That's the next iteration of Horizon 2020 for you in the know. So you can access this European pot of funding. These are more complicated grants to apply for, but they have the advantage in that they allow you to work with international partners, giving you that access into international marketplaces. They also tend to be, particularly in the case of Horizon Europe, they tend to be bigger pots of money as well. More complicated, longer to get to them, but can be worth the investment. Other avenues worth looking at, slightly more obscure ones, so things like charities. I've given the example of CNAT UK. A lot of charities, particularly in medical sectors, they do fund research. Do check out the T's and C's. There can be some caveats to their funding, but it's an avenue worth looking at. There's also sources like the National Institute for Health Research, again aimed more at medical devices, but that kind of avenue tends to be quite specific. They also tend to be perhaps not as well known, worth checking out. So once you've identified your source of grant funding, other thing to bear in mind, each of these sources of grant funding, the providers will have their own agenda. If you can align your project and your aims to that agenda, you increase your chance of being successful. So let's take an example. Innovate UK. That is a body from UK government. What are they looking to do? Well, ultimately, they're looking to support the government with their industrial strategy. Governments want to be elected. How do they do that? By ensuring that there are jobs, well paid, good jobs, quality jobs, and a plenty of them. If your project is going to increase employment, that's all to the good. They're looking to increase wealth for the individual and for the UK economy as a whole. They're looking to solve problems, invest in infrastructure. Now that can be health, transport, the judicial system, education, all those things that governments need to have a handle on. If you align with that agenda, it increases your chance of being successful. So we've looked at grants avenues, we've looked at agenda. The next thing to consider, there are certain key issues that before you get really into an application, you need to address. So what are those key issues? The first one is eligibility. Now, every single grant funding competition will have an eligibility criteria. Check it, Check it again, grab a friend, bring them in, ask them to check it. Make sure that all aspects of your project are eligible within the terms of the grant funding competition you're applying for. Who's doing it? Have you got the right kinds of entities applying? Does the length of your project fit within the criteria? If you're trying to put in an application for an 18-month project, but the competition will only allow a project length of 12 months, then you've got a problem. Double check project budget. Are you going under budget? Are you going over budget for what you're looking to do? Check all aspects. You don't want to fall at that first hurdle. Second thing is scope. Most competitions will tell you what the scope is, what is within the terms of that grant competition in terms of sector, in terms of what kind of technology they're looking at. They are going to be quite specific on that. Make sure you fit within the scope terms of that competition. If you are in the border, or you might possibly be, don't try to shoehorn yourself in. Check with the grant funding provider whether your project fits within the scope. Get it from the horse's mouth. Don't try to guess, don't try to shoehorn your application in, your project in, if it's not quite a fit. Look for something else. Might be mindful of your cash flow. Some grant funding competitions will give you an upfront payment. It'll only be a small one, but just to kickstart things off. Check whether that's the case. Mostly you will get your payments in arrears. You'll spend the money, you'll put a report in, and then you'll get paid for what you've spent. Ensure that your cash flow will cope with that. As I say, very few grant competitions will give you 100% funding. You need to make sure that your cash flow will cope and that it will cope with payments in arrears. So once you've got all that checked out, fantastic, we can go on to the main part of the application. Now, within the application, there is generally around 7 key topics that will come up no matter what the grant funding competition. These are the key topics that will come up again and again. They might be asked in a different way, they might be in a different order, they might have a slightly different emphasis, again, going back to the agenda of the grant funding provider, but we're generally looking at these 7 particular topics. So, what are the key topics? The company and the team. Who are you? What are the skills and experience you have in delivering this kind of technology, this kind of project? Do you have access to the resources you need? Do you have the equipment? Have you got access to things like data sets? Have you got access to expertise that you need? Have you got office space? Have you got lab space? Have you got the infrastructure for travel? Whatever is required for your project, can you deliver that? Are you the best people to deliver this project? Of course, the answer is yes, but that needs to come across. The approach and offer. What are you presenting to the marketplace? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Why is it a problem? What is your solution to that problem? And why is it the best? Why is it better than what we've been bumbling along with so far? Make sure that you drive that innovation, make yourself stand out. The marketplace. What's the business environment that you're going to be operating in? What does it look like? How big is it? Is it global? Is it in the billions? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? At what rate? What's driving those changes? Who operates there already? What are you going to be going into in terms of that environment? Facts, figures and references, we'll come to that later. Do back up any statement that you make. Within that business environment, you're not going to be the only person servicing the need that's there. You're going to have competition. Who is that competition? What is their solution to the problem that you're addressing as well? Why is yours better? How do you stand out from that crowd? Don't underestimate how important that can be, especially in a very competitive grant funding competition where there may be people operating in a similar space to you. You need to stand out and show why you are the best, why your solution is the best. The business model. We've looked at the market, you've analysed that, you know the environment you'll be operating in, you look at who you're competing against. Now, how are you going to enter into that market with your innovation and start making money from it? What kind of business model are you going to use? Are you going to license your technology? Are you going to directly sell to customers? Are you going to sell to businesses? Are you going to operate an agent or distributor model? What markets are you going to target and when? Who is your customer? How are you going to reach them? Are there any regulations or legislation that you need to match with, or you need to overcome to get into those markets? What are the barriers? And have you got your IP situation sorted? Do you know what you've got in IP? How are you protecting it to drive that business model? Now, one that people have a lot of problems with, risk. Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, if it's not risky, it's not innovative. If it's not innovative, as we looked at earlier, it's not really suitable for grant funding. Risk is good. Grant funding providers like risk. Risk is new, risk is exciting. Risk needs to be mitigated though. Identify what the key risks are. Now that's technical, that's managerial, and that's commercial. All the risks associated with your business model and this project in particular, what are they? How likely are they to happen? How are you going to mitigate it? If everything goes wrong, how are you going to cope? Do make sure you have a plan. Now, we come down to the money, costs and return on investment. How much is it going to take to get this project from where you started from to the finish line and get it commercialised? How much and why does it cost that much? Don't try to do things on the cheap. Equally, don't overinflate how much it's going to cost. Be realistic. Return on investment. You've identified the market and the market opportunity. How much of that market can you get hold of and in what kind of time scale? And what return on investment in this project is that going to get you? Realistic estimates. If you're saying that you can get 80% of a multi-billion global market competing against very big multinationals, I'd be very interested to hear how you're going to do that. Be realistic, be ambitious, but be realistic. Don't forget, grant funding providers are an early stage, high risk investor. They're wanting to know what that return on investment is going to be in terms of you growing as a company and getting your innovations onto the market. So those are the key topics. Now you've got all that information together, how are you going to put it together? Now the first thing, and I really can't emphasize this enough, give yourself time, plenty of time. That much time, no, more time than that. Do not try to put together a grant application in a caffeinated haze the day before the deadline. That very, very rarely ends well. Give yourself plenty of time. Get people involved. Make it a collaborative effort, particularly if you've got different departments being involved with your grant application. Make sure you give yourself as much time as you can to this. We're going to go back to school. Exam technique. Grant applications or grant competitions will tell you what information they want to see. We've gone through the key topics. They will tell you what they want to see for each of those sections. Answer that question. They will generally bullet point it out. Answer each of those bullet points, provide the information they ask for in the section that they ask for it. It is going back to school. Remember what your teachers used to say? If you don't answer the question, you can't get the marks. Exactly the same principle applies with grant funding. So make sure you've answered all of the bullet points, provided all of the information asked for, and as fully as possible. I alluded to this earlier. Spend some time on research, facts, figures, and references, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about the markets. If you're talking about it's a big market and it's a growing market, well, that's nice. But you're more convincing if you say it's a 10 billion global market growing at a compound annual growth rate of 8%. And if you put a figure, a reference in, Business Insights Report 2019, Doesn't have to be big, has to be there. Put facts and figures, back them up with references. And the same with any assertion. If you say something is innovative, how is it innovative? Why is it innovative? Back up your statements. If you can provide references and figures, even better. Clarity and conciseness are key. I can guarantee that every assessor for any grant funding competition will have a stack of applications to get through, read, assess and score. Make it easy for them. Make it nice and easy to read. Make it easy on the eye. Avoid jargon. Avoid acronym soup. Acronyms are great, but spell it out first what the acronym is and then use it, and don't use too many. It makes it difficult to read. Short sentences are good. Use the Economist as a model to follow. Their writing style is perfect for grant applications. Get somebody to read it for you. Is it clear? Is what you're putting down, is it coming across immediately? If the person's having to reread sections, that means the assessor will have to reread sections. If you're making them do that, they're not going to be too kindly disposed to you. Clarity and conciseness. Make your points clear. Similarly, there is a tendency when you're confronted with a grant application form to suddenly turn into a cephalopod. That's squid, octopus or cuttlefish. Why do I say that? Because there is a tendency in that situation to try and panic and then hide behind a big cloud of ink. There is the tendency to just fill the page with words. Resist that temptation. Avoid waffle. Again, we're going back to clarity and conciseness. Avoid just filling the page with words. If sentences aren't working for you, don't put them in. The waffle comes across to assessors very, very quickly and very easily. If there are gaps within your application, that generally means that you don't have the information that's needed. That means go back, do your research and then fill that bit in. Don't just try to fill that gap with words. Again, rarely ends well. Another thing to avoid the zombies. Now, what on earth am I talking about here? What I'm talking about is the active versus the passive voice. There's big, long, complicated explanations of what the differences is. Here's a really easy one. If you can insert by zombies after the verb, you have the passive voice. Dr. Rebecca Johnson on Twitter, who says social media isn't educational. And again, ladies and gentlemen, reference, you can go back and find that. It's short, it's to the point, but useful. She was killed by zombies. That's the passive voice for you. Zombies killed her. That's the active voice. For a grant application, it might be the results of the experiment will be analysed by Acme Limited or by zombies. Passive. Acme Limited will analyse the experiment results. The active voice generally reads better. It's generally shorter. Do make it work for you. Sometimes the passive voice is entirely appropriate, but avoid it where you can. So we're coming to the end now. How are you all doing? Are you feeling better? Are you looking at that and going, oh, good grief, what am I doing? Help is available. Under Innovate UK EDGE, we help people with grant funding applications on a pretty regular basis. We can help you by guiding you on what funding opportunities are out there and what you should be looking at. Some will need collaborative partners to be eligible. We can help you find those. We can guide you through the process. We can take you through the forms, the admin, what you need to do, and we can do a mock assessment of the drafts that you have. Now, we can pull them apart, put them back together again, help you get it as strong as possible. But do bear in mind, we will be honest with you. And that concludes my section of the talk. So I shall hand back to Iona.
Thank you very much. Such a useful presentation, and I know they've covered such a massive amount in that, so really great to know like where we can go for help next. Also, for those of you who are watching this live, again, just a reassurance, it is all being recorded, and we'll be sharing that video out afterwards. So if you've been scribbling away all of that amazing advice, you will get the opportunity to watch that back as well. Now, we do have Mike back online, so I'm just going to ask Mike to see if he can unmute, if we can hear him all right now.
Morning.
Wonderful, we've got Mike. So Mike, if you want to share your content, I'll bring you live in a moment. So if everybody has questions, do feel free to bob those in the chat as we go through. But we do, as I say, have all of the contact details we will be sharing with you. I know at the end of Mike's presentation, there is a slide with both Mike and Angela's contact details on there, and we will share that again, as I say, when we send the video out afterwards. Have you got your content shared okay there, Mike?
Not yet, no, bear
Not
with
a problem, we can all wait a moment for that. So just kind of then reiterate a few things that I thought were just so important listening to Angela go through, because I think they're really important, not just in terms of grant funding, but actually when we're working out what we do as businesses. That last minute in a caffeinated haze really spoke to me, that just getting that time, getting people to check through things, to understand how things fit into your business model, because I think sometimes we see these grant opportunities come through and we think, brilliant, here's this, you know, this amazing bit of funding that we can go through, and we perhaps don't always take that step back to think, well, actually, does it fit within my business? Is it something that makes sense and that's going to be right for us to do? Wonderful. So I can just see Mike starting to share his content there. So
just before we go into
that,
shall I give the answer to my little quiz?
That would be absolutely wonderful. I'm going to bring you back up on screen there, Angela. Share the answer for us.
Right, well, the answer was, it was the picture of the white rabbit holding the clock, because our site at Daresbury was the birthplace of Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, of course, the white rabbit being a key character. And he lived there for the first 11 years of his life. So if anybody got that, congratulations on your quizzing trivia knowledge.
Wonderful, absolutely love it. I'm always a big fan of a bit of trivia, also a big fan of quizzes, and I think now we're all looking at getting back towards some form of live events. We will be definitely getting some quiz on the way. So Mike, if you want to just get your slides ready there, I'm going to line you up ready to go live.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen now. Can you
Fab, I can see the desktop shared, and we just need it altering so I can see those slides there. That's coming through for me beautifully. If you just want to full screen your slides, we should be ready to get cracking with the next half of the presentation. Okay. Wonderful. So sending you live now, Mike, and I'm going to mute myself so that I'm not talking over your slides.
Right, good morning everybody. I hope you're looking at the front page of my presentation. Can you confirm it's there? Right.
That's all good, Mike, we can see that.
Okay, good morning. We've had a few technical difficulties this morning. Now, as an innovation and growth specialist with Innovate UK EDGE, the idea today is to guide you through your investment journey and to try and give you a view of the current funding landscape. Now, a lot of this will follow on quite naturally from Angela's presentation. My expertise is in the access to finance arena, which includes all the projects around that, which may include help and assistance for you in pitch deck development, business plan and business strategy development, and importantly, introductions to angels and VCs. Now, the traditional journey that you've been on or may be about to go on involves getting support and probably financial support from friends and families. You may have already been to a bank for a small loan, And you may have joined startup clubs, be associated with your local enterprise partnership. You may also have joined the local chamber and other areas. Today we're going to talk about the follow-on investment. Now this may be looking at what your opportunities are within the equity funding, venture capital or alternative finance. Now, I was in that position in June 2000 when 4 of us from different disciplines saw a gap in a market, which in our case was the consumer electronics. Due to a business exiting, we saw an opportunity, and with a 10-page business plan and with contacts, I had a meeting with a VC. Now through that and the follow-up meetings, the VC offered us investment. Now he said we look like a very capable team, and he thought we and he could make some money from our innovative idea. We were, and he did, and year 5 of our 10 years that we ran the business, we let him exit and he came out with a nice dividend. Now it's not that easy now, but the same scenarios apply. So you need to consider what you need in your investment. What next, from whom, what, why and how. Now all these routes cost money. It may be, as Angela was describing before, you may have applied and successfully won a grant award, which may want you or need you to look for co-funding. Now this is where you've got to go outside the box and think about what you need to complete your project. Now all these cost something. It may be that it costs you equity in your business. Now the whole idea with an angel investment is that you get smart money. Now that's from an individual investor or a consortia of investor. You get money to support you, but more importantly, you get expertise. So finding the right person with the right amount of money that you can work with is important. Now we were lucky in our venture. We found someone who invested in us, not just the money, but also helped us. Now investors invest in people, and they also invest in innovation. So those are the two things. Now the same strategy almost applies as you do when you're applying for grants. What is the problem you're solving? What is your solution? Why is it different? And is the business scalable? This is what investors, whether it's a consortia or an individual or a venture capitalist, is looking for. Why would I get involved with these business? Can I get on with these people? So it's important that you find the right investor. Now we can help in that journey. What you need to do is to set your strategy, who you are and what you need. But again, the different funders are looking for the same thing. You need to value yourself. You need to demonstrate what your business is about and what you can offer to your market. Again, in the same way as Angela described, you need a plan. Now, what kind of IP do you own? Is your idea original enough that you can patent it? You've got some design rights. You've got to be looking to be innovative. What barriers are there to entry to the market you're trying to capture? And importantly, what strengths do you have in the team? The team, whether it's just you, some friends, some other colleagues, whether it's a partnership, you are the value. That's what people are investing in, is your expertise and your experience and how you're going to win at what you want to do. Now the strategy needs to demonstrate how and why the investment that someone puts into the business is going to grow your business. So you need to demonstrate in your plan for the future how you'll monetize your product or service. What's your route to the market? Do you have existing sales pipeline? And more importantly, can you can you demonstrate forecasted revenues? Now, an investor will come into the business, as our VC did back in the day, will want to know how you will exit the business and how he will exit the business. Now, do you want to run this business for a certain amount of time and then sell to a competitor or to a larger entity? Is the establishment of your business going to be that you want to buy the investor or investors out at a certain period and carry on growing the business under your own funds? Now, that strategy needs to be fairly implicit at the start. So like any book, you've got a start, the middle and the end. But you've got to consider, along with your forecasts, you've got to keep it real, but you've got to keep it interesting, and it's got to stay innovative. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of changes with the way COVID has affected everybody, and the same applies to getting in touch and engaging with investors. I won't say that investors are completely sat on their hands, because investments have taken place into businesses as we've gone through this horrible time. But we are now getting to the stage where there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are investments that will be taking place as part of what we call SEIS and EIS investments, where investors need to spend their money by the end of March. So there are opportunities out there. Everything we've done and everything that's changed within COVID has meant that you never eyeball people face to face. We've had to teach people, we've had to coach people, and we've had to mentor people through electronic meetings. The same is applied when it's come to asking for money. You've got to sit behind a camera, or in front of a camera, I should say, to demonstrate your idea on a pitch deck, to try and excite investors and get them to get on board with you. Now, this has been difficult. It's meant a lot of changes to investees. It's meant a lot of changes to investors. But the avenues are still open, where you can pitch to an individual investor or to a group of investors at angel pitching events to try and get your story across. But obviously, the importance is not just trying to read what the investor's thinking, but also to be able to know your stuff, know your business, and answer questions. Now, all this will come to an end at some stage, and you'll be able to meet investors face to face, and they'll be able to invest in you and in your business and experience the excitement with you in and we are here to help with you. Now, it is hard work, and as Angela said before, you are not alone. There's lots of help and advice out there. There are a lot of online webinars, introduction to angel investment, meet the teams, specific group training events, where you can learn and see how it's done now. And again, in following on from what Angela was saying, you need to listen to a lot of advice. Not all the advice you'll get is going to suit you. You can disregard, but you will pick up from different people and different collaborative partnerships what you need to know and what's suitable for you. It is your business. Again, that word realistic. You need to decide how you're going to do this, what you're going to need to complete your journey. And you need to balance between what you really want and what you really need. And you've got to consider the team, and if there is a team that you're going to grow, where you're going to get the right people from and what the future looks like. Now, it is all hard work. There is help out there, and by all means we can help you, guide you through the different plans that you may have. But stick to your plan. You need to look at the end game, take as much advice as you can, and be realistic, and don't give up. Now, back to relating to the business that we started in June 2000, we took advantage of some small grants that were available at the time through what was then called Vale Royal, who offered us a chance to position our business in Winsford, for which we got some money towards computers and to all sorts of other bits and pieces that helped us on our journey. Combining what money you need from realistic investment proposals, don't give up on the fact that there may be help out there. There is a lot of help. You've just got to keep your head down and look at all the different opportunities that are available to you and look for the right help and the right guidance, and that's what we're here to do. There's some contact details now on this slide. By all means, contact us. That's Angela and Mike Skinner. Our contact details are there. Any questions, please allow us to try and help you now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mike. I'm just going to leave these on the slide for a moment and then jump on. Have to say, Mike, absolute masterclass in recovering from technical issues and still being able to give a seamless presentation. And I think it's definitely something that we can see, whether we're talking about going for grant applications, getting investment support, actually being able to deal with those little issues as they come along just shows the value of knowing what you're talking about, having all the information ready to go, that when these unexpected things crop up to try us, we can keep that going. So absolutely massive thank you to both Mike and Angela for joining us today. So the contact details are on there. We're going to share this video out with everybody who's attended and also share out on our wider channels. So if you've been watching that and you've thought, you know, this would be really useful to another business that you've been speaking to or other contacts, that link will be available for you to share with them, and we'll include those contact details again on the email. So I know both Mike and Angela and, you know, the whole team there are really keen to speak to as many businesses as possible. As we've touched on a couple of times, it has been a pretty tough 12 months, not just for businesses, but also for investors trying to work out what the world is going to look like. We are hopefully on the upward curve coming out of that. You know, there is money out there, there is support out there. So please do use people such as Mike and Angela and the team to help you navigate that space. It is tricky, but the rewards are there. So finally, just to say, this is the first in a series of Elevate Innovation webinars. Our next one is going to be on Monday, the 29th of March, and we're going to look at exploiting innovation. So again, we'll share the link out to that one, and hopefully you'll be able to book on it as well. So thanks ever so much for joining us. Any questions, do either send them through to me or directly to Mike or Angela, and let us know how you're getting on with your innovations. Thank you ever so much, everybody.